The Texas justice system is messy, so let's break it down. You're listening to So You Got Arrested, the podcast that tells you what really happens after an arrest. Hosted by Brick criminal defense attorneys, we talk to the people who've lived it, worked in it, and been shaped by it. Whether you're facing charges or just want to understand your rights, your options, and the smart moves that could change everything, we've got your back.
So welcome to So You Got Arrested. This is a Brick Criminal Defense podcast. I'm your host, Steve Barrera. I'm joined by my colleague, Jacob Lindberg, and Miss Stephanie Franco. So Stephanie, about a week or two ago, I am out and about, running some errands, and my Ring camera alert pops up, and I see this gentleman at my door, and he's knocking on the door, and if I'm not there, and then I see him leave, and he goes out to his car, and he's in his car for a little bit, and then he comes back, and he leaves something at my door, and I'm like, okay, what is this? So I get home, and it's a nice little handwritten card that says, hey, neighbor, would you please consider voting for my daughter? Signed, Miss Franco's dad. And I thought that was just the coolest, sweetest thing. I've never met Stephanie, right? But so I get this letter, and then I start asking around, like, okay, well, who is this person? Her dad seems like a very nice person, so I can imagine that reflects on her. And then I find out who she is, and I said, hey, I want to get her on the podcast. And we just got lucky in that Jacob knew who you were, and so Jacob reached out to you, and now here you are.
Here I am.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, my dad was absolutely tickled, although I think he's going to not like that I said tickled, but he was really proud of himself that he has led to this connection. So
there you go.
It's a very small world that he happened to knock on your door. But I am Stephanie Franco. I am currently a first chair felony prosecutor at the DA's office. And yes, I'm running for judge right now for the 187th District Court, which is a felony criminal court here in Bexar County.
So where are you from?
I'm from San Antonio, born and raised here.
Okay.
I lived here my whole life, except for the years that I left to go to college and grad school and law school.
Okay. And so you said that you're running for a position in a district court. Now, a lot of the people who watch the podcast aren't very familiar with legal terms. So there's different types of courts, right? We have county courts and we have district courts. What are the difference between the two?
So county court handles misdemeanor cases. The court that I'm running for is a felony criminal court. So that can handle everything from simple drug possession of PG-1 cases, which would be cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, drugs like that, all the way up to capital murder. Okay. The court specifically that I'm running for also has a lot of domestic violence cases. If it's a felony and it's a crime, it could land in the 187th.
Yeah, that's the way I usually describe it to families of clients. I always say, like, look, when we go in a district court, that's kind of what we call big boy court, because there's a lot of serious stuff happening there. Not that serious stuff doesn't happen in misdemeanor court, but obviously district court is where people could go to prison, and lose significant portions of their life to incarceration. So how long have you been a prosecutor?
I've been a prosecutor for almost 11 years now.
Was it always here in Bexar County?
Yes, only here in Bexar County. Before I was a prosecutor, I was a juvenile public defender in Travis County.
Wow.
So I've been on both sides. And yeah.
So let me ask you about that. You were first a public defender. So did you feel that gave you a different type of insight once you became a prosecutor?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you see things? Because I always wondered, sometimes you have career prosecutors, not that there's anything wrong with that. But I always find it interesting when people can bring a different perspective. Like you said, hey, I've been on the other side. So how did that affect you once you became a prosecutor?
Well, I mean, to start, when I applied at the DA's office, I wasn't sure that I would like being a prosecutor. Mm-hmm. It was a judge in Travis County who told me when I was a public defender, Stephanie, you need to try prosecuting. I think you would find that you love it. And I told her name was Judge Texana Davis. And I said, there's no way. I am a defender. I help the people who need help. I help the vulnerable. That's what I need to do.
Sure.
And she said, you need to try it. And so I was ready to come home. Bexar County is my home. Like I said, after law school, I worked for a year as a public defender, but I wanted to get back home, and Nico was hiring at the time. And so I applied and I got it. And when I started working, I realized that honestly, I can do as much, if not more good as a prosecutor than I could as a defender, because my job is to seek justice, not seek convictions. And
Correct.
It's a joy every day to get up and just do the right thing and make sure that people are getting the help they need when they need it and getting a bit of a hammer when they need that too.
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, I love being a prosecutor.
My former co-host was Scott Simpson, and who's now gone back to prosecution. But that was one thing that we miss Scott. Maybe we'll have him back as a guest. But one thing he was always fond of saying is, a prosecutor's obligation is to seek justice. And he said, he would tell me, Steve, I don't think every prosecutor understands that. And so it's always nice to hear when somebody recognizes that.
Yeah.
And having that experience on both sides, right? I mean, I can relate a lot personally just because my mentor right out of law school pushed me very hard to go to the DA's office. And, he's a smart guy. He wears glasses, lacks a little
Doesn't
bit of
have
hair
hair.
up top. Yeah. And so, it was something I listened to at the time. And joining, that's where we met, is the juvenile division of the office.
Right.
And I love juvenile specifically because you really can make a difference in those lives. And so did you, at the DA's office, how much time were you in juvenile, or what divisions did you go to?
Yeah, I've been in so many divisions, but I got to spend almost 3 years in juvenile. Okay. I worked with Judge Jackie Valdez, who is incredible, and I got to do a lot of work on a specialty court that she puts on called Strive. And the objective of that court was to specifically focus on kids who are about to age out of the juvenile system. And it's to give them the tools that they need to become productive members of society, whether it's hooking them up with a mentor, getting them into a GED program. If school is not really for them, then we get them into a trade school or other things to basically create a world in which they can be successful and get out of the trajectory that they might currently be on. Mm-hmm. And that was extremely impactful. Working in that court has been amazing.
Strive was so great. I was a part of it as well, luckily enough. And I mean, it's something as little as a ID or driver's license for the person so they can better apply for jobs and have those foundations that maybe they weren't given, being raised. And so what are some other divisions, things you enjoyed while still working at the DA's office?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the family violence division. That was impactful. It was...
those are tough cases.
Those were hard cases. So those were some of the hardest cases I've ever worked on have been the child sex assault cases,
right.
Child victim cases. And so my time in family violence was very important and significant. It was also very difficult. A lot of times the ages of the victims in cases would be the same ages as my own kids.
Right.
And so that was very difficult for me, but it was also very important work. And I have received letters from jurors about how strong of an advocate I was for the kids and how important I am in the system. And so that was great. And most recently, right now, I'm in the violent crimes division of intake. So I get murders, manslaughters, aggravated robberies.
So you went from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with very traumatic situations, very traumatized families and victims and what have you on a daily basis. That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough, but it's important work that needs to be done to help keep our community functioning and safe and prioritized.
And you want the right people doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything about you and your personality that you feel like, hey, this is why that was the right calling for me? I mean, is there something about, because those, like I said, those are very difficult cases to deal with. I know, dealing with cases like that on a daily basis, sometimes you can get, sympathy fatigue. It can really wear on your psyche. Is there something about you that, enables you to handle these things in the way that you do without, falling into depression or whatever the case may be?
Sure. I mean, I was raised in a household. My mom and my dad are very strong and my mom is a very religious woman. Mm-hmm. And I was raised, and so is my dad. He's not bad. My mom, I know. Sorry, Dad. My mom is a very big praying woman. And with all my family, we all have servants' hearts. We've all been called to serve in different ways. And this happens to be the way that I'm called to serve. I mean, it hasn't just started when I was a prosecutor. When I was in high school, I was a mentor to kids. And in undergrad at Texas Tech, I volunteered at soup kitchens. Mm-hmm. And then in law school, every January, I would go put on pro bono wills clinics with UT Law down in the Valley. And then, a few years ago, we even fostered a child. So it's just part of who I am. It's part of, I think that giving back to people who need it is just part of our duty as good human beings. And
so you've had a lifetime of giving back to the community.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. That's great. So you're in this situation where now, are you? What court are you currently in right now?
So right now, because I'm running for judge, our office has a policy that you can't be in a specific court. So
that's right.
I do the violent crimes intake for a number of courts, but I'm not physically in a court.
Okay. And that's the policy for all the candidates, because I know we've interviewed some of the other candidates that are running for like DA, and they're in that situation where they were pulled from the trial courts for that.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned being a juvenile court prosecutor, and I've always thought that was an important position because you need the right type of person for that position, because juvenile court's supposed to be about rehabilitation.
Right.
And occasionally, and I'm not going to name names or counties, but you do run into juvenile court prosecutors who almost treat it as an adult court where it's all about punishment. And it's all about, well, I'm going to teach them a lesson. And that's not what juvenile court's about.
Correct. Yeah. The focus is supposed to be on helping them. Now, there are certain crimes and certain sets of facts that lead to warranting someone, certifying someone as a grown-up, as an adult. And those cases then, if you are certified as an adult, even if you are technically a juvenile, that changes the goal of the system, which at that point could potentially be punitive.
Right.
But for the most part, the majority of kids are not certified as adults because the majority of them, their brains are still developing. And the idea is not to lock them up, but to help guide them on a path where we want people in our community to be successful. What is it? Rising tide raises all boats.
Right.
So, as we help people be better, we're helping our society be better as well.
Right.
And there's a lot of things in juvenile that I really liked, and I kind of wish adult courts did as well. And, again, you kind of gain that new perspective just because it's new laws and new theories,
well,
right?
Like
it's
what?
all
What would
rehab. And so specifically, when a respondent in the juvenile courts is arrested, they're immediately given a probation officer, and that probation officer does a full interview, goes to their house and speaks with their parents and does all these things. And so, immediately we're it's not just cause number CR 25, blah, 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 blah. It's this person, it's Jacob Lindberg. It's a person that has a family and wants to do better. Not that I was ever a respondent in a juvenile court.
No.
I want that on the record. But, it's much more personal because it is rehabilitative. And so are there any things that you feel potentially as a judge that maybe you can bring over experience from juvenile where you can kind of bring to being a judge of a court, a felony court?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I can bring over is just treating everyone as an individual and not just a number and not just a crime, and actually seeing them for who they are and figuring out the best way that we can to change the trajectory.
Yeah. And the thing that I like that you mentioned is you said, hey, during college, I worked at a soup kitchen. So you've seen people who are struggling, and, and I'm sure with that comes a recognition that, there are people who may find themselves in circumstances that, not that we're not all responsible for what we do, but sometimes we're in circumstances that make it more likely that we may fall off the straight and narrow.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate that you bring that to the table. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is your father, who came and left that note. He is an attorney.
Yes.
And so my father was an attorney, and I always felt that gave me a little different perspective. I felt that maybe, when I kind of started practicing law, I was able to hit the ground running a little more just because I had that mentorship. I had seen what my father was doing while I was growing up and how he was handling things. I don't know if you have a take on that.
Yeah, well, my dad's a defense attorney. My whole family are defense attorneys. I am the black sheep that became a prosecutor, not a defense attorney. I'm an Acevedo. So Ernest Acevedo, the late Ernest Acevedo, was a judge.
Yeah.
Johnny Cisneros is my uncle. I come from a family of defense attorneys.
Wow.
So I bring the perspective of, growing up, hearing about what their clients are going through in terms of what led them there, right? So I don't just see the crime. I literally see the circumstances that lead to the crime.
Right.
And I think you said the word, which is perspective. I think that's what you bring to the table, is not only their experiences that they kind of nurtured you in, but also your own experiences that you've developed throughout your career and experience. And so I think that's really important, is that perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of times it's like you said, treating the person in front of you as an individual, as a human being, as opposed to just a defendant whose name is on a piece of paper. But we're coming up on our break. So thank you for listening. We'll be back after this short message.
The attorneys at Brick Criminal Defense have helped over 5,000 clients move on with their lives. When an arrest or accusation turns your life upside down, we have the knowledge, experience, and integrity to get your life back on track. Traditional legal ethics, modern legal tactics, the best defense possible to get you through the criminal justice system. Search Brick Criminal Defense to see our reviews and find out why so many of our clients have trusted us to fight for them. Brick Criminal Defense, helping our clients move on with their lives.
So we're back with Stephanie Franco, who is a candidate for the 187th District Court here in Bexar County. When did you decide to hey, I'm going to go ahead and make this run for judge?
July. I had decided in July.
Okay.
And can I tell you a little bit why?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
So I didn't necessarily think I need to be judge and I'm ready to be judge and I want to be judge. It was more of a conversation I was having with a friend, figuring out who was going to run against the person currently in the court that I'm running for, the
so
187th.
There's an incumbent that you're running
Yes.
running against. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Whose name is also Stephanie. So for our race, it's going to come all the way down to the last names, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so when I was asking people who's going to run against this judge, because in my opinion, the harm she was causing to our community was so great that someone needed to do something. And every person I spoke to said, no one is willing to.
Oh, wow.
For fear, for various reasons.
Right.
And I went home and I talked to my parents and I talked to my husband. And when I described some of what's happening there, all of them said, how could you not run?
Right.
And that led to me running.
Now, would you mind you mentioned, kind of harm to the community. Would you mind discussing that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently in the 187th, which is the court I'm running for, and it covers all of Bexar County. Everyone in Bexar County can vote for me and should vote for me. The judge there puts everything in the courtroom on YouTube. She's colloquially referred to as the YouTube judge. This includes victim testimony. And even when victims state that they do not want their trauma to be put online, the judge there chooses to do so anyway. And as a prosecutor who's worked with victims for 11 years now, I know how hard it is for them to get the courage to speak and to, for domestic violence victims in particular, there's so much shame associated wrongfully, but associated with their trauma and with, the types of cases that they're in. And so then to add additional trauma by saying you now have to choose between privacy and justice, it's horrific, frankly.
Well, and I may be a little old school in this regard. Jacob is of the age of social media. But, to me, it somewhat demeans this process and this profession that we're all in, especially when you see the videos, they get cut up and repackaged into these entertaining formats with music behind them and top 5, worst attorneys to appear in front of this judge and, whatever the case may be. I mean, to me, it just demeans what we all do. It almost makes a mockery of this very serious undertaking that we go through. That's a district court. That's a court where people's liberties at stake. That's a court where, people are often sentenced to decades away from their family, and somehow it becomes repackaged as entertainment on YouTube, which, I don't care for it. I don't like it. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So.
And you often hear defense attorneys upset about this. It's really interesting to hear you as a, 11-year prosecutor now, bringing in that perspective and bringing in the victim's perspective of it. Because as defense attorneys, we have cases and many people that we've represented in there. And, it could be something where they made a really unfortunate mistake or poor choice in that situation. And they can end up with a great outcome afterwards. But that video on YouTube lives on. I mean, that doesn't go away. Their employer, that maybe they have it to where it wouldn't affect their record and things like that, but it lives on that YouTube page, AKA the internet, forever at this point. And so it's really difficult as defense attorneys, and there's been a lot of upset defense attorneys because of that. And so hearing a prosecutor talk about it is really interesting.
Yeah, well, and the thing is we know what the court of public opinion believes, right? We know what people think when they see someone in court. When I pick juries, the first thing I say is, if I presented this case right now and if I asked you right now if this person sitting here is guilty or not guilty, what would you say? And I have to make sure that I get a jury that says not guilty if I don't present evidence, right? Because until we give evidence, they are presumed not guilty. There is no evidence against them. But we know that the court of public opinion sees someone in court. They believe they're guilty of whatever offense they're charged with. And so their faces, defendants' faces, are being put on blast from day one. And so someone who's assigned right now to the 187th is going to have a vastly different, less private experience than someone who is in any other court in all of Bexar County. This is the only court in all of Bexar County that does this. And I think that it's absolutely wrong that a defendant or a victim, if you're a victim of crime, I mean, if you're in district court, you are a victim of robbery or strangulation or assault, family violence.
The most serious of crimes.
The most serious offense is sexual assault, murder. There are so many serious cases in district court. And so for these to be the cases that get broadcast and monetized and put on YouTube and then mocked on TikTok, it's absolutely inappropriate. Unfortunately, it's not illegal, and that's why this judge has been able to do so for years now. And
so on that, what makes it not illegal? What makes it okay? That kind of thing, if you could explain that as well.
It's not okay.
What makes it not against the rules, I guess.
I think you missed out on the last 5 minutes of conversation.
Well, because it's an open courtroom, right? The courtroom is open, and I believe in an open courtroom. And I believe that when cases are relevant to public safety and public interest, those cases should be open, right, and published. Like the news, the SAPD officers who were recently charged with a crime, San Antonio and Bexar County had a vested interest in finding out what happened in that case because the police exist in our everyday life and that matters to the public. And so KSAT at that point was able to stream that case. When I am judged, they will be able to stream cases that are relevant to the public. What's not going to be online is going to be cases involving private matters, strangulations, assault, family violence cases, robbery cases. I mean, if a victim is a victim of a crime committed by a gang member, I can guarantee you that person does not want their face broadcast online.
Right,
absolutely.
But right now in the 187th, that's the situation that exists.
Could you imagine somebody taking the stand and having to identify, just as a private witness, a private citizen who's merely a witness, not a party to anything, having to go in and identify and say, hey, that's the guy, subjecting that person to time in prison, and then maybe the guy gets acquitted or whatever it is, or their family sees it and he goes to prison and they're angry. I mean, just, it's terrible to think about.
Yeah. I mean, it literally shocks the conscience.
So in this, I agree with you, and as you've been going through this campaign, have you had opportunities to speak to different groups, to kind of make your viewpoints known to different individuals?
Absolutely. I have basically not stopped speaking to any group that will see me until I started, because I honestly feel the pressure to do better for our community. It's not a personal goal so much as the pressure to just protect our community and do better. And so that's part of why I've been working so hard. I have interviewed with many different groups. I have gone to, if you tell me you have a neighborhood meeting, I ask you, can I come and have 5 minutes of their time? Because I have yet to meet someone who, when I tell them what's happening, I've yet to meet someone who says, oh, no, I think that's great. I think that should stay. Like, no one does. And everyone is shocked when I tell them what's happening, everyone outside of our community. And so I am doing everything I can to share what's happening, because I think if people knew this was happening in our own backyard, every single person would be at the polls on February 17th, which is when early voting starts, voting for Stephanie Franco.
And so is the incumbent in the primary against you?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So it's the primary that's very important that we're talking about here.
Yes, the Democratic primary.
Okay. So, people, if this issue is important to you, you need to get out and vote in the primary. Don't wait until the general election. Are you endorsed by any groups right now?
I am endorsed by so many groups. I am endorsed by the Firefighters Association. I am endorsed by the San Antonio Police Officers Association.
Wow.
I'm endorsed by the CWA, which is a workers' union. I'm endorsed by AFL-CIO, which is another workers' union. And those unions in particular care so much about families and protecting working families. I have more endorsements. The Stonewall Democrats, the Northeast Bexar County Democrats endorse me as a true Democrat. The Bexar County Young Democrats. Truly, every single organization that has interviewed both of us, me and my opponent, for endorsements has endorsed me. And the reason is that these groups care about our community and they care about how people are treated. And right now, how people are being treated in that court is unacceptable.
And what are some of the other issues in going against someone that's already on the bench, as an incumbent? What are some of the issues in kind of attacking that, as a new candidate?
Well, I can tell you that at the start, a lot of people involved in the Democratic Party were resistant to hearing about why I was doing it. At the start, I felt a little bit like people resented me for daring to challenge this column.
You're upending the status quo.
Yeah. Right. But once I started telling them, hey, this is what it's like if you actually are in the system like we are, and you see it every day, here's how it's actually affecting human beings, people you care about, right? People know victims of crime.
Absolutely.
People know people charged with crimes. And no matter who you know, you don't want them treated how they're being treated right there. And so when I started actually getting them to hear what I was saying, many of them realized, like, okay, you're here for a reason, and we agree with you.
So if people go during the primary in March and they cast their ballot for Stephanie Franco, what can they expect to get from you as a judge on the bench?
Well, first, let me say that early voting starts in February. So
Okay.
I hope people will vote in early voting February 17th through the 27th.
Don't wait until the last minute.
Please don't wait till March 3rd. You might get a flat tire or something. We don't want anything to stop you. But what you can get from me is you're going to get someone who cares about treating every person with dignity, cares about treating people with respect, and truly cares about the good of our community, and will make the decisions that need to be made in order to protect our community. I'm born and raised here. I'm raising my own 2 kids here. I care about San Antonio. I care about Bexar County, and I care about what I'm leaving to my kids.
Do you have any other questions?
No. Where are some places like social medias, things like that, where people can reach you, find you?
I love that. My Facebook is Stephanie Franco for Judge. I think that's my Instagram handle as well. I think I have a TikTok handle, and I think it's Stephanie Franco for Judge. And I have a website.
And so,
do you want to guess what it is?
Is it Stephanie Franco for Judge?
It is.
Okay,
it's Stephanie Franco for Judge.
If people want to donate, how can they donate?
On my website, there's a big button that says donate here, and you can donate to me. And every single dollar that comes in is going towards spreading my message about what's happening.
Fantastic.
And that was StephanieFrancoForJudge.com. There we go.
And again, the person I'm running against has my same first name. So you have to remember Franco.
Frank gets the vote.
Yes. So when you get into that ballot box, it's Stephanie Franco.
Yep.
Early voting starts in February. Don't wait until March 3rd. And we appreciate your time. We appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you would like the voters to know about you before we wrap this up?
I'm not sure. If you see me around town, introduce yourself. I'm happy to meet people. And it excites me when people say, I saw your sign and I wanted to meet you in person. Or, if you have a neighborhood event and I can come introduce myself to a group of people, I would love to do that too. So I'm a down-to-earth person, and I enjoy meeting people who understand what I'm going through.
Well, and I can attest to that because, like I said, I had never met Stephanie prior to today. And when I reached out to her, she was very warm and welcoming and said, absolutely, I would be happy to talk with you. So I have zero doubt that if you asked, for a little bit of her time for some questions, she would respond. So thank you for coming on. This is So You Got Arrested with Brick Criminal Defense with Stephanie Franco, who is running for the 187th District Court. Please vote in the primary.
Thanks for listening to So You Got Arrested. If you found this podcast helpful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. For more legal insights and real talk from the front lines of the Texas justice system, follow us and subscribe. And remember, Brick Criminal Defense has your back. For more information, visit us at brckdefense.com.